Now joining the show is the very best guest. Again, the reoccurring guest that we always have on every week. Beat writer for TigerNet, co-host of the Orange Crush podcast, Grayson Mann. Grayson, thank you for joining the show. How you doing, man?
It's like I told you, man. Happy championship week to all who celebrate. Not many, as Dabo Sweeney pointed out to us on Tuesday. Not many teams are getting to do this, so it's a special opportunity. And for Clemson, they have not one, not two, not three, but just the utmost chances to get into the college football playoff. And Saturday night, it's win and you're in. So it's a unique opportunity to get back into the big dance.
It is, and it's one of those, I guess, fun things about the expanded playoffs is that you really don't know that you're out of it until the season ends, right? Last year, you would look at it, and as soon as you lost the game, you would say goodbye to your playoff chances. Clemson has 3 losses, and they're still hanging in there. Obviously, have a tough task against SMU on Saturday, not a team to sleep on. Looking at this matchup, who do you think this, just from a quick synopsis, who do you think this matchup favors more, Clemson or SMU?
You know, it's an interesting conversation because depending on who you ask, SMU is a really good football team or they're a football team that's the beneficiary of an easier schedule. I think I find myself somewhere in the middle, and I think we'll get into sort of the X's and O's and all about the ACC Championship. For me, it's going to come down not with the players, but can this Clemson coaching staff execute at a high level? I think in all of their 3 losses, there have been head scratchers from this staff where we thought, okay, on paper, Clemson should be more talented than probably a decent portion of these teams in the country, if not the bracket, but their staff. I mean, we'll talk about South Carolina. There are some issues that I have with the game that don't really necessarily fall on what the players are doing out there, but just sort of the decisions that we're seeing from the sideline. It's going to come down to that again on Saturday. I expect a really tight game. SMU is a really explosive football team. Dabo Sweeney said it himself on Sunday in his ACC teleconference. And then on Tuesday, just further diving into the tape, this is a different SMU team. When comparing it to South Carolina, the Gamecocks are certainly a more power-based football team, and SMU is going to be more flash and finesse. But it's going to be one of the more faster teams that Clemson faces. And once again, they're going to have a mobile quarterback that's going to present a lot of issues for that Tiger defense.
Oh, 100%. And I'm glad you brought up Kevin Jennings. He is a dynamic QB. I think it's safe to say that, well, I know Lenore's is good, but I think it's safe to say that Kevin Jennings might be the best quarterback they've played on the year. Being given the Lenore Sellers, I guess, experience, right, where he's explosive, he can use his legs. Do you think this can help Clemson be better prepared for facing another dual-threat quarterback of this caliber?
Right. Obviously, we saw the Lenore Sellers experience in person yet on Saturday. The words that I kept hearing being thrown around in the press box was Cam Newton. Now, obviously, the two aren't comparable, but just the way Sellers was able to magically escape out of the pocket when he looked dead to rights from a Peter Woods or a TJ Parker, who are pretty good in their own right. I think for Clemson, it's a quarterback that's pretty quick, pretty speedy. More in my estimation, someone that runs to throw and not just running to try to find those yards, but definitely can pick it up if he needs to. Definitely an easier quarterback to bring down. You go from someone who's a pretty big stature to about 6 feet, 185. Not saying that Jennings is going to be an easy tackle, but certainly a little bit easier of a challenge than what Sellers was presenting on Saturday with the Gamecocks. So it's a different style of mobile quarterback, if that makes any sense to your audience in that sense. But, another challenge for Clemson and Wes Goodwin. I would totally expect SMU to look at that South Carolina tape and seeing, we know Sellers is pretty special, but we got a special quarterback of our own. Let's see if we can exploit that dual threat capability and really try to give this Clemson defense some fits in Charlotte.
Well, to that point, though, I will say, I think you made a great point about Kevin Jennings, but SMU, very great at running the ball. Brashard Smith is one of the best backs, arguably the best back, or one of the best backs in the ACC. When you look at the 3 games that Clemson has lost this season, Louisville, South Carolina, and Georgia, those 3 losses, each team ran for 160 yards rushing or more, right? South Carolina gutted Clemson on running the ball. with Lenore Sellers, with Ruckus Sanders and co. Is this going to be a big vocal point of Clemson is just trying to stop the run? And if so, what type of scheme do you think they put out there? Do you think they try and have more of a front of a 4-3 look? How do you think they try and limit this rushing attack?
I think you'll see the same similar defense to what we saw against South Carolina, where you're going to see Sammy Brown, Wade Woodaz, and Barrett Carter on the field at the same time in a big 4-3 set where you're really trying to set the edge and dare SMU to say, hey, it's going to be good, I'm good, let's see what you got. And for SMU, you're right on the head, Matt, and all their weaknesses have been all season. It has been that rushing game where gutted is the perfect word I think I would use to describe Lenore Sellers' capabilities against Clemson on Saturday. Or you go back to Isaac Brown or the running back by committee that Georgia was able to throw at Clemson.
Nate Frazier, yeah.
Trevor Etienne. Yeah. So they really have been able to exploit that weakness on Wes Goodwin's defense. Is Saturday night the see that shored up? Because if you really are able to plug up that weakness, we've seen Kate Klubnik in this offense at times continue to improve, continue to make plays when they need to. Against SMU, they're the 88th ranked, I think, pass defense, so you're going to have more success there. I think there are some things that if Clemson can shore up, they should have not an easier time, but the pressure off of what the offense is having to carry is a load. Ironic we're saying that in this decade where it's been the complete opposite. But yeah, this has been this defense's biggest flaw, and I would have no doubt that SMU is going to have a high chance of exploiting it.
Definitely. And again, this is Grayson Mann from TigerNet joining the show. Grayson, you mentioned that offense might have to carry the load for Clemson, which is funny because, again, the past couple of years has always been defense, defense, defense. With that in mind, Kate Klubnik playing a team from Texas, him growing up in Texas, do you think this game has a little bit of a extra layer to it for him?
I think it's got a lot of layers to it, not just because of the Texas connection. And he said yesterday that if he had told him when he committed to Clemson that his junior season he would play SMU in the ACC Championship game, he would have looked at you a little funny, just because that seemed so far-fetched at the time when Klubnik was being recruited by Clemson. This is a big game for Cade because this is really a full circle moment for him. This is the Charlotte, that stage is where Klubnik really got his first lick, and as the Clemson quarterback, relieving DJ Uyunglele 2 years ago, playing against Drake May in North Carolina. For Klubnik, he really outplayed May on that stage, and now we see where May is obviously my quarterback for the Patriots. But that was the moment where Klubnik really shined, and people really started to see what he could be at Clemson. And so now you come back, the stakes are a little bit different. You're a junior quarterback. You've improved dramatically from that point. And now it's for the college football playoff. It's not just to go to the Orange Bowl and just salvage going from a good year to a slightly above average year. This is really to redeem some sins that Clemson has occurred this year. You can do a lot of that by securing a bid for the postseason, and it really creates some amnesia of some of the struggles that this team has really had to burden this year. College football playoff appearance, no matter how you get there, it's still a ticket to the big dance, and as Sweeney says, anything can happen. Definitely.
Two more questions I have for you, Grayson. The first one being the running back room of the Tigers. A lot of people were shocked by the lack of, I want to say production, but opportunities for Jay Haynes against South Carolina. He had a great game against Citadel, and you could say it's Citadel, yes, but he made some explosive plays. The Philadelphia running game wasn't firing on all cylinders. Do you expect this week that Haynes gets some more playing time and gets some more opportunities against SMU?
I think he should. It's not really a matter of if I expect. I put it out on Twitter during the game on Saturday that Jay Haynes needs to be getting more of the load in the second half. And I believe he had 3 carries the entire afternoon, which is just mind-boggling to me, given the way Phil Maffa has looked in the last couple of weeks. Benson, you see it too. He looks like he's struggling out there, not because of anything ability. It looks like he's really hurt. And just the way that you look at the tape in September and October, the way Maffa ran compared to November, it looks like 2 different players. And when you have a guy like Jay Haynes, and like you said, I know it's the Citadel, but there's still that explosion that can translate from game to game. And when Haynes did come in against South Carolina, he had a pretty explosive rush, and it was 3rd and 14. They were just trying to establish better field position. but Haynes came in there and made a play. And so I think you have to try to find that balance against a good SMU front seven. That is a very good front seven, no matter what you try to say about the ACC and scheduling. Clemson really needs to get Haynes involved and give not only Maffa a lick, because when he has the, I guess, energy, he's not as hurt and not as bogged down from just the wear and tear of the game. Maffa still can be special, but I think Clemson needs to really find a balance in this running back room. I really think they've mishandled the snaps and the production this year, but that may be a conversation for the offseason when we really get to look at this 2024 season in a larger picture.
Definitely. And quick question for you now about that front seven you mentioned. I mean, Jafari Harvey and Isaiah Smith both have 6.5 sacks on the year for SMU. I'd say Clemson held up pretty well against the really vaunted Gamecocks front seven that everyone knows how elite that is, how elite they are. Do you think that this O-line can continue to hold up well against a uberly productive pass rush from SMU?
Yeah, we talked to Blake Miller, we talked to Walker Parks, and he was mentioning Blake Miller as Mike, and sort of went off on that tangent there. But he mentioned that this was an NFL defensive line they just faced up against, and they did pretty well for themselves. And you have to also account for the fact that this is a really beaten-up offensive line.
Yeah.
Bringing back Tristan Lee and Marcus Tate into the fold when they really weren't 100% heading into Saturday, and you hold up against Dylan Stewart, you hold up against Kyle Kennard, who's going to be an All-American. The task is largely the same against SMU. It's not going to be a shock. I think you're going to see early on that this Clemson pass rush is just going to go from another solid front seven to another. And it's not going to be this shock to the system when they get out there. And so I think for this offensive line, it just, again, shows the job that Matt Luke has been able to do in getting these guys prepared, the play calling to get the ball out quicker. So I think this offensive line is going to have success. I would expect SMU to make plays. That's why they're in the ACC Championship. That's why they're the 8th best team deemed by the committee. Depending on if the committee still views that, if Clemson holds on to win, I believe SMU should be in the playoffs, regardless of Saturday. But that also, again, that's another conversation for another time.
Yes, story for another day for sure.
But I think this SMU defensive line is legit. But we saw a little preview. Hey, what Clemson, this offensive line has been able to do against premier competition. They're able to shore up Virginia Tech's top pass rusher. They're able to shore up, not Pittsburgh, but that's a little bit of a caveat because of the makeshift line they had to throw out there. But then when you saw that starting five against South Carolina, they really performed beyond my expectations. And I think against SMU, that's going to really help them.
Definitely. My last question after you, Grayson. Again, Grayson Mann from TigerNet joining the show. Last question. Obviously, it's the one that everyone loves to hear. Who do you think is going to win the game, and what's your score prediction on it?
You know, it's interesting. I feel on talent-wise, there were a lot of factors on why I picked South Carolina last week to win. It came down to just where Clemson has shown up in these big games. The moment has – there used to be a time, Matt, and you remember growing up, where there was a big game for Clemson football, and you expected to get their absolute best no matter what from that staff, from that roster. I'm not sure I feel that way about big games from Clemson football. I think they're 3-7 in their last 10 top 25 games, and they have a chance against SMU to redeem a lot of sins from 2024. But I do think some of those glaring flaws are going to crop up again in Charlotte. I'm going to take SMU to beat Clemson. I make it.
Wow.
But it comes down to this coaching staff. I'm not sure they're going to get the best out of these players. I think Clemson will be sitting at home for the college football playoff.
What's one of those flaws? I know you mentioned a couple glaring flaws. What are some of those flaws for Clemson?
I just think that this rushing attack and just sort of how this defensive staff has handled it. Sammy Brown is an example that comes to mind. He played 3 snaps in the fourth quarter when he was very much bottling up Lenore Sellers for a good majority of that middle portion of the game. I don't know where that decision lies. Sweeney said it was a coaching decision. I don't know how you can leave one of your best players, if not the best player on the field on Saturday on the bench. Some of those decisions have just been mind-boggling. I think for me, Madsen, it's got to be a see it to believe it. They showed me a little bit more against South Carolina, but I'm not sure. And I've been very pessimistic this month of November, so maybe that comes back to bite me. But, man, I'm just not sure I completely trust it yet. And I think I'm going to be taking SMU. That may change in a couple days. For me, South Carolina was a very easy decision. This one, it's really a flip of the coin. coin, and right now I'm just sitting on SMU.
All right, well, Grayson, way to leave us out on a bang. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining the show, and have a safe trip up to Charlotte tomorrow.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.